Your cat is standing at the edge of the kitchen sink again. You've watched it happen 100 times. There's a full bowl of clean water sitting right beside the food dish, changed this morning, sparkling and untouched. And yet here comes your cat, hopping onto the counter, staring at the faucet, pawing at the drain, waiting for you to turn the tap on so it can drink from a thin stream of moving water, instead of the perfectly good bowl 3 feet away. You've probably wondered if your cat is just being difficult, spoiled, dramatic, a tiny furry diva demanding room service. It isn't. What you're watching is not stubbornness. It's a survival instinct older than agriculture, older than cities, older than the first cat that ever curled up beside a human fire. And that instinct is quietly, slowly, over years, sending a bill to one of the most important organs in your cat's body. Tonight, by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why your cat barely drinks, why the bowl next to the food is practically invisible to it, and what you can do starting tonight to change the story before the bill comes due. Because here is the part almost nobody tells you. A cat can walk around for years looking completely healthy, eating well, playing, purring, sleeping in the sun, and be mildly dehydrated the entire time. Not dying of thirst dehydrated, just a little dry, a little under, every single day. And the organ that pays for that quiet, invisible drought is the kidneys. We'll get to exactly how that works. But first we have to go back, way back, to a desert. Picture a landscape of cracked earth and heat shimmer. Somewhere in the dry regions of the Near East and North Africa, thousands of years ago, lived a small striped hunter called the African wildcat. This is the animal your house cat is descended from. Not a jungle cat, not a swamp cat, a desert cat. An animal that evolved in a place where standing water was rare and precious and often dangerous to find. Now think about what that means for a body. If you evolve in a desert, you cannot afford to be an animal that needs to find a lake every few hours. You will die. So evolution did something clever. It built a hunter that gets almost all of its water not from drinking, but from eating, from prey. A mouse, a small bird, a lizard, a large insect. These little bodies are roughly 70% water. When that desert cat caught a mouse and ate it whole, it wasn't just eating a meal. It was drinking a glass of water disguised as dinner. Fur, flesh, blood, and all. And because the food itself carried the water, the desert cat's thirst drive, the internal alarm that says, "Go find something to drink," was turned way, way down. It had to be. A cat that felt thirsty every time its water was even slightly low would waste energy and risk its life searching for water it didn't strictly need, because dinner was already handling it. So the wildcat evolved a famously weak sense of thirst. It could run a real water deficit before its body even bothered to ring the bell. This is the single most important sentence in this entire video, so let it land. Your cat is not built to notice when it's dehydrated. The alarm is turned down at the factory. In the desert, that was genius. On your kitchen floor, next to a bowl of bone-dry kibble, it's a slow-motion problem. Because look at what we did. We took that desert hunter, we brought it inside, we gave it a soft couch and a warm lap, and a very long, very safe life. And then, for convenience, we handed it a diet that would have been unthinkable in the desert it came from. Dry food. Kibble. A food that is, by design, somewhere around 10% water or less. Remember the mouse, 70% water. Now compare it to a bowl of dry kibble at 10% water. Your cat's entire biology, its kidneys, its thirst response, its whole internal water management system, was tuned over thousands of years assuming that food itself would deliver most of the day's hydration. And we swapped the 70% water mouse for the 10% water pellet. And then we set a bowl of water next to it and said, "Don't worry, you can just top yourself up from this." But that's not how the desert cat was built. It was never built to consciously drink the difference. Its thirst alarm is too quiet to make up a gap that big by choice. So many cats simply don't. They drink a little, not nearly enough to replace what the mouse used to provide, and their bodies quietly settle into running a small daily water deficit. Not enough to look sick, just enough to matter, for years. And now we arrive at the organ that carries that weight, the kidneys. Picture the kidneys as two extraordinary filters, each one packed with hundreds of thousands of microscopic units that spend every second of your cat's life cleaning the blood, pulling out waste, balancing salt and water, and deciding, drop by drop, how much water to keep and how much to send out as urine. When a body has plenty of water, the kidneys can be generous. They flush waste out in a nice, dilute, watery stream, like rinsing a sink with the tap running full. But when a body is running dry, the kidneys have to do something much harder. They have to conserve. They have to pull back as much water as they possibly can and concentrate all that waste into a smaller and smaller amount of urine. They squeeze. They work the same volume of waste out through less and less water, like trying to wash that same dirty sink with a cup of water instead of a running tap. Cats are actually champions at this. Their desert kidneys are astonishingly good at producing super-concentrated urine. That's the gift the desert gave them. But it is a gift with a price. Asking those microscopic filters to run concentrated day after day, month after month, year after year, is asking them to work in a permanent drought. And filters that work hard in a drought for a decade do not stay pristine forever. Over a long life, that chronic, low-grade dehydration is one of the quiet, grinding stresses that the kidneys simply have to absorb. They pay it silently. They pay it without a single dramatic symptom for a very long time. I'm not going to walk you through the warning signs of kidney trouble tonight. That's its own subject, and it deserves its own careful video, and this is not it. What I want you to hold on to is only this. The kidneys pay the price for chronic dehydration, and any real change in how much your cat drinks or how much it's urinating is not something to shrug off. It's a reason to see your veterinarian. Not to panic, to pay attention. That's the whole message. Thirst and urine are the dashboard. When the dashboard changes, you go get it looked at. So that's the why. That's the desert, the mouse, the kibble, and the kidneys. Now let's solve the mystery that started this whole thing. Because understanding the desert explains why your cat is chronically a little dry. But it does not, on its own, explain the truly strange stuff. It doesn't explain why your cat ignores the bowl right next to its food. It doesn't explain the tap obsession. It doesn't explain why it would rather drink out of your water glass than the fancy dish you bought it. For that, we have to go back to the desert one more time. But this time we're not thinking about water. We're thinking about danger. Imagine you are the Wildcat again. You've made a kill. You're crouched over a small carcass in the dust, eating. Now, where is water in a desert? Often it is collected near where things die, where other animals gather, where blood and remains and decay have pooled. In the wild, water that sits right next to a carcass is water that has a decent chance of being contaminated, fouled by the very meal you're eating. An animal that drinks from the puddle right beside its kill is an animal that risks getting sick. So the desert cat evolved a rule, written deep into its instincts. Do not drink where you eat. Keep your water source and your food source apart. The cat that separated them lived a little longer, got sick a little less, and passed that caution on. Now walk back into your kitchen and look at your setup. The food bowl and the water bowl, side by side, touching, a matched set. To you, that's tidy. To that ancient instinct buried in your cat, you have placed the drinking water directly beside the carcass. Every cell of caution in that little body is quietly saying, that water is next to the food, that water might be contaminated, don't trust it. And so your cat walks away from a perfectly clean bowl to go find water somewhere else. Somewhere that feels safe, somewhere far from the kill, like the bathroom sink, like a random glass on your nightstand, like the bathtub drip. To your cat, those aren't weird choices, they're smart ones. That water is nowhere near the food, so by the old desert logic, it's cleaner. And that brings us to the tap, the running water obsession that half of you are nodding at right now. Same desert, same danger. In the wild, still water, water that just sits, is water that can go stagnant, grow bacteria, and turn dangerous. Moving water, on the other hand, a trickle, a stream, a fresh flow, is far more likely to be clean and safe. So the cat that preferred moving water drank safer water and lived better. That preference is still riding around inside your house cat. When your cat begs you to turn on the faucet and drinks from that thin, bright stream, it isn't being fussy. It's obeying a rule that kept its ancestors alive. Moving water is trustworthy. Still water in a bowl, sitting there all day, is suspect. There's one more small saboteur hiding in that bowl, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Look at your cat's face. Look at those magnificent whiskers, fanning out wide on both sides. Those whiskers are not decoration. They are exquisitely sensitive instruments, packed with nerves, feeding your cat a constant map of the world around its face. And they are, for many cats, uncomfortable to have crushed and bent. Now picture a deep, narrow bowl. Every time your cat lowers its head to drink, those sensitive whiskers drag and press against the sides of the bowl, bending, rubbing, sending a steady stream of low-level irritation up into that delicate face. It's not agony, it's just annoying. Annoying enough that some cats will cut a drink short, or scoop water out with a paw, or simply decide the whole business isn't worth it, and walk away a little more dehydrated than they should be. People call it whisker fatigue, and whatever you want to name it, the fix is beautifully simple, and we're about to get to it. Because now you know everything you need to know. You know your cat comes from the desert with a broken water alarm. You know dry food leaves a hydration gap the cat won't fill on its own. You know the kidneys quietly pay for that gap over the years. And you know exactly why your cat rejects the bowl by the food, distrusts still water, and loves the tap. So let's take all of that and turn it into a plan. A hydration playbook you can start tonight. The first and biggest lever is the one that goes all the way back to the mouse. If the desert cat got most of its water from food, then the single most powerful thing you can do is put the water back into the food. Wet food, canned food, pouched food, food that comes swimming in its own moisture at somewhere around 70 or 80% water, right in the range of that ancestral mouse. You are not just feeding your cat when you serve wet food. You are hydrating it the way its body was designed to be hydrated, through the meal, so the weak thirst drive never has to save the day. Even swapping part of the diet over to wet food, or mixing extra warm water into it to make a kind of gravy, moves real water into your cat without asking it to make a single conscious decision at the bowl. If you're going to make one change, make this one. The second lever answers the tap. Your cat loves moving water because moving water feels safe, so give it moving water it doesn't have to beg for. A pet fountain keeps water circulating, flowing, aerated, and fresh, and to your cat, that endless little stream reads as trustworthy in a way a stagnant bowl never will. For a lot of cats, the day a fountain arrives is the day they suddenly start drinking like they mean it. Whatever fountain you choose, the thing that matters is that the water moves and that you keep it clean, because a dirty fountain undoes its own magic. The third lever fixes the carcass problem, and it costs you nothing. Separate the water from the food. Move the water bowl away from the food dish. Not a few inches, really away. A different part of the room, a different room entirely. The moment that water is no longer sitting beside the kill, the old instinct stops flagging it as contaminated, and suddenly a bowl your cat ignored for months becomes drinkable. And while you're at it, don't stop at one. Set up multiple water stations around your home, in the places your cat actually spends its time, so that no matter where it is, safe-feeling water is only a few steps away. More stations, more chances, more water in the cat. Keep those stations away from the litter area too, because the same don't drink near contamination instinct applies there in force. The fourth lever silences the whiskers. Trade those deep, narrow bowls for wide, shallow ones. A broad, open dish lets your cat drink without its whiskers ever touching the sides. No bending, no rubbing, no reason to cut the drink short. It is such a small change, a different shape of bowl, and for a whisker-sensitive cat, it can be the difference between a reluctant sip and a proper long drink. And then there are the little tricks, the extra nudges. Some cats are fascinated by a couple of ice cubes clinking in the bowl, chasing them, pawing them, and lapping at the cold water as they melt. The novelty and the movement pull the cat in, and it drinks more than it would have from still water. Another gentle option is plain meat broth, and I want to be very precise here. Plain, cooked meat and water, and nothing else. No salt, no seasoning, no onion, no garlic, no flavoring of any kind, because a number of those add-ins are genuinely unsafe for cats, and that's a whole separate lesson. Just clean, unseasoned broth, either offered on its own as a savory drink or poured over food. To your cat it tastes like prey, and prey is exactly the thing that made drinking feel natural in the first place. If you're ever unsure whether a particular broth or ingredient is safe, ask your veterinarian before you offer it. Now, all of these levers do the same thing. They close the gap the desert left open. They put water back where the cat's biology expects it, in the food, and in safe-feeling moving sources, so those hard-working kidneys get to run with the tap on, instead of squeezing water out of a permanent drought. But there's one more skill I want to leave you with, and it's the one that turns you from a worried owner into an early warning system. You need a rough sense of your cat's normal. Not exact measurements, not a laboratory, just a feel for baseline. You can get a loose sense of how much your cat is drinking by paying attention over a few days, noticing whether the fountain drops or the bowl empties at about the same rate it usually does. And if your cat uses a litter box with clumping litter, you have a quiet little gauge sitting right there. The urine clumps have a normal size. You get used to seeing them, and once you know normal, you'll notice when it drifts, when the clumps suddenly get much bigger and more frequent, or much smaller and scarcer. You're not diagnosing anything, you're just noticing change. Because change in thirst, change in urine, is exactly the dashboard light we talked about. It's the signal that says, time to call the vet and get this looked at. Catching a change early, while your cat still looks and acts completely fine, is one of the kindest things you will ever do for that little desert animal on your couch. So let's go all the way back to where we started. Your cat, standing at the sink, ignoring the full bowl, waiting for the tap. You used to think it was being difficult. Now you know the truth. That cat is carrying a desert inside it. A weak thirst drive built for a body that drank its water from prey. An instinct that says the bowl by the food is contaminated, and the still water is suspect, and only the moving stream can be trusted. And two hard-working filters quietly paying the price for every dry year that goes by. You can change that story. You can put the water back in the food. You can give it a stream it doesn't have to beg for. You can move the bowl away from the kill, widen the dish, cool it with ice, flavor it like prey. You can learn your cat's normal so well that you'll catch the drift before it ever becomes a problem. So here's what I want you to do tonight, before you go to sleep. Go find your cat's water bowl. Look at where it sits, right next to the food, deep and narrow and full of water your cat has been quietly refusing to trust. And move it. Just move it across the room tonight and see what happens. That one small step right now is where the whole story starts to change. Go check on it tonight. Word count, roughly 3,560 words, within the 3,400-3,700 range. V1 equals B. Pergunta implícita barra cold open mystery. Why won't the cat drink? V2 igual a 3. Investigação. Myth-busting investigation into the real cause. V3 igual a comportamental mais evolutivo mais fisiológico. Behavior mais evolution mais physiology. V4 igual a contraste temporal. Desert ancestor versus modern house cat. Mais conexão inesperada. Water bill goes to kidneys. V5 igual a I5. Circular. Closing callback to the cat at the sink. V6 equals 6. Revelador. V7 equals cascata de consequências. Desert to weak thirst to dry food to deficit to kidney cost. V8 equals R1. Crescendo Constante. Steady build from mystery to playbook to CTA.